What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with another reaction. In this one, we have working in USA versus the Netherlands, the 12 biggest differences. Before we jump into these differences, if you guys happen to enjoy, please don't forget to smash subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and let's dive right in.
I decided to take a 50% pay cut to work in the Netherlands.
God!
Somehow
50%?
I feel happier. That was my big dilemma after finishing my master's program in the Netherlands. Do I want to stay in the Netherlands and try to find work and see what happens? Or do I want to go back to the US and make a lot more money? Show me the money! Well, 4 years later, I'm still here in the Netherlands. In this video, I want to share with you my experience as an American expat working in the Netherlands when it comes to work culture, work identity, job security, salary, benefits, burnout, and much, much more.
Let's do it.
Before diving in, it's important to have context. So here's a bit about myself. I currently work in HR for an international IT company in Amsterdam. But before that, I come from California. I studied business economics at UCLA, and I worked in both Hollywood and Silicon Valley doing finance, consulting, design with startup companies and big corporates such as KPMG, Universal Studios, Apple, Amazon. And you see what I just did there? Name drop. It's a very American thing to do, to name drop, that I don't notice often in the Netherlands. Which leads me to my first point. So, what do you do? A big part of your identity in the US is tied to where you go to school, the job that you do, and the company that you work for. Let me explain, because it starts at a very young age. The US education system is a $1 trillion industry, and you learn at a very young age to equate success in life with where you go to school, college.
I'm going to Harvard.
The job.
Agreed.
I am manager of the Scranton branch of Dunder Mifflin.
And now with social media, it's become an even bigger thing. Where you go to college.
I just got into Harvard. There's no way that just happened.
Yes way, you just got into Columbia University.
Yup. Those are absolutely huge, those videos. You see them all over TikTok now. And I mean, he's not wrong yet, so I'll let him keep finishing his point.
The future is set. And now I feel a bit down because I didn't go to an Ivy League school. But when I did get into top-ranked UCLA, I literally punched a wall out of excitement. Not because UCLA is a great school, which it is, but because I could tell people I go to UCLA. And where you go to school has a big impact on the job you get out of college and ultimately your success in life. Brand name does matter, but this is only if you get into a big name school, work for a big company, or in a prestigious profession. Most people don't, but many do strive to get there. This is where this hustle culture is born out of, that the harder you work, the more that you get. And this identity by association extends into the workplace. What happens when you don't have this label anymore? When I lived in LA, I could tell people that I worked in finance for a Hollywood studio. But after I quit my job, I was unemployed, didn't have a job, didn't have a label, didn't have an identity. And in the Netherlands, no one has come up to me and said, oh my God, you went to Maastricht University? And not because Maastricht isn't a great school, but I feel like when people ask where you went to school, what job you do, it comes out of a place of curiosity, who you are as a person, and not by judgment. And it feels very, very freeing. Well, as you can see, Americans grow up in a society that tends to be more competitive, so there is a big need to stand out, to be number one. Be
Facts.
Otherwise, you might get.
I feel like definitely, I'm 100% agreeing with him. In America, it feels like we do tie our identity to what we do for a living, and what you do, depending on what you do, as like a certain prestige, and depending on what college you went to, as a certain prestige, and things such as this nature. So we are conditioned, like growing up, like you want to get into the big colleges, you want to get the best jobs. That's what equals success. That equals success. Not happiness, not just being kind of the best. And it makes you, like you said, that influences hustle culture to make you get out there and try to be the best of the best. Where you kind of forget about like being happy. Like, like you don't gotta be the best of the best. Just do whatever you love, and as long as you're happy doing it, who cares?
Get left behind. And because there is this need to stand out, there's more of this need to show off in order to stand out. In the Netherlands, I find that it's the opposite. There's actually a Dutch saying that goes do normaal or act normal.
Doe maar gewoon. Dan doe je al gek genoeg.
And this is really about standing in instead of standing out. It's about not showing off. There's also another one that comes from the Dutch education system, the sixes culture, where getting a 6 out of a 10, just passing, is good enough. Now for me, I was a bit shocked and surprised because when I studied here and I got a 7 out of a 10, which was a C in the US, just passing, I was disappointed. Now a 7 in the Netherlands is actually quite good, but I was more shocked to hear that the Dutch students, who some of them got a 6, were quite happy. And then a Dutch classmate told me about the sixes culture, where getting a 6 just passing was good enough for them. And from my experience working in both countries, what I find in the US is it's really about getting done now. It's about going above and beyond, even if it means working more. In the Netherlands, what I find is that the working culture is more chill and relaxed compared to the US. There's also less pressure. If there's something that can be done tomorrow instead of today, let's wait until tomorrow. And this reminds me of a conversation I had with a Dutch guy. He told me in the Netherlands, there isn't this above and beyond culture. Actually, many people don't want to go above a certain level because more responsibility, more stress, but not a lot more money like in the US. Why go for more stress when life is already pretty good enough? And it's also not to say that Dutch do normaal or the sixes culture doesn't mean that the Dutch are not ambitious. They are actually one of the most innovative countries in the world, but it just means that they're okay with good enough and it's okay not to brag. And this Dutch way of doing
I feel like I love that in a sense of, I love the sixes culture because like you said in America, like you kind of get disappointed. Like C's aren't necessarily, they're just looked at as satisfactory. Yeah, you passed, but you can do better. But I had a friend who used to always tell me, hey, C's get degrees, right? As long as you pass that certificate, that you got that diploma, that's what matter. Don't matter if you got all A's to get it. C's get degrees, and I absolutely love that because that just passing, it gives you more like, yeah, let me live my life. Let me not study myself to death, but let me actually live and actually enjoy life and experience things and not just be in my room with my face in a book all the time. So I think I enjoy that culture. And yeah, they're happy not going above and beyond, but going to a certain level. And I also had a mentor who told me, like, the better you are at work, the more your reward for being great at your job is more work. And ever since I heard that, I was like, gee, that's a good point. Yeah. I don't want more work, so I reaching that certain level and standard, I can appreciate that.
Normaal is shown in its egalitarian culture. Dutch people don't care about who you are, your title, your status, as much as Americans do. It's about being the same in the Netherlands. People are viewed more or less as equals. And this also complements the famous Dutch directness. When there is less hierarchy, you feel like it's okay to be honest, to say anything, whether it's the janitor or the CEO. In the US, you have to be a bit more careful about what you say and to whom. But in the US, because there is more hierarchy, decisions are usually made a lot faster. In the US, decisions are made by people at the top. In the Netherlands,
that is a very interesting cultural difference. I don't know which one is the best, but I can appreciate a system where it's like, yeah, you're the boss, but that doesn't make you any better than me. You feel me? We're all looked at upon as equals. And yeah, like I can talk to you without, because in US, like you may be a certain way, but when the boss come in, you sit straight up. I don't know, you feel nervous. It's almost a nervous feeling. As we're in the Netherlands, it seems like, hey, like you're cool with the boss, just like you're cool with your coworker who holds the same title and position as you. And I really like that.
Netherlands, decisions are usually made by the group. For example, in the Netherlands, what usually happens if you want to make a big decision is you'll have meetings and you'll have to get the consensus and input by members of the group before making a final decision. And from my experience working in the US, of course, people do ask you for your input as a lower level employee, but if it's a big decision, usually say the VP will make the decision. And while things may happen faster faster in the US, faster doesn't always mean more effective. And faster doesn't always mean less hours as well. There's a popular saying that goes like this. In the US, you live to work. In Europe, you work to live. And
Facts.
I remember my first month working in the Netherlands. It was around 5 o'clock and I walked around and it looked like there was nobody in the office except for me. Because in the US, especially in big corporate companies, you don't really see too many people get off around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. If we look at OECD statistics, we can see that only 0.3% of workers in the Netherlands work very long hours as compared to 10.4% of workers in the US. At the same time, we can also see that the Netherlands is a country with one of the shortest working weeks in terms of hours at around 30 hours per week compared to 39 hours in the US. A big reason why this is so is because part-time work is actually quite common in the Netherlands. And it's actually quite common to find people only working 4 days a week or with 36-hour contracts. For example, my colleague has a 36-hour contract, so every 2 weeks she gets 1 day off. And I asked her why she did this. She told me she values time over money. Such a thing is unthinkable in the US.
And I think that's one of the biggest things is valuing your time over money, because I feel like we just have such limited time. Money can be made, but you can't get time back. And so when you work your entire life away, you miss out on so many moments and you forget to enjoy your life. Now, if work is that enjoyable for you, then shoot, do what you want. Work as much as you want. If you're happy, I'm happy. But a lot of people get stuck in this ambition and hustle culture and forget to live life, and because they're so stressed about working. But again, in the U.S., we stressed about bills too. So sometimes you ain't got no choice but to work all them hours.
That's where it's really about work.
And outside of work, I used to always talk about work. My European friends used to tell me to stop talking about work outside of work. And it took me about a year to finally get it. And I'm not saying that it's good or bad, but just an observation that Americans do tend to talk more about work outside of work.
But it's also very different, the mentality in the Netherlands. The mentality in the US is really about work and making money, and you can actually make a lot of money in the US. So if your goal is to make money, the US wins.
You get paid a lot of money in the States, especially if you compare it to what you make in the Netherlands.
You can sometimes make 2x, 3x, 5x, 10x what you could make in the Netherlands in the US. Let's look at a few examples.
Let's take a look at some salaries. A software engineer, a financial analyst, and a teacher in the Netherlands as compared to the US.
Okay.
Now, if you are a software engineer in Amsterdam, you can make a median total compensation of 93,000 euros. This includes a base salary, stock options,
that's pretty nice,
and a bonus. If you are a top engineer, you could make up to, say, 400,000 euros.
God
Now, compare that to San Francisco software engineer salaries, and in SF, you make a lot more money in tech as a software engineer, 231,000 median total compensation. Now, here's the big difference.
Oh, why did nobody tell me? When I was going to college, why did nobody tell me software engineers got paid this much? I wish somebody would have said something.
Engineer in a place like San Francisco, you can make a lot of money, millions of dollars as a software engineer. And a big portion of that is due to stock options. Now, let's take a look at a financial analyst in Amsterdam, 63,000 euros as compared to $150,000 in San Francisco. And a teacher, one of the most important professions, a teacher in the Netherlands,
that sounds about right,
50,000 euros per year as compared
that's
to
pretty
the
good.
US, 65,000 per year. The US,
when you do the euro to dollar conversion, is that not like similar price? Or is the US making a bit more?
US is really big, so if we look at a place like California teachers make around 85,000 per year.
Their bills are ridiculous,
now,
so
while that might be high, if you're a teacher making 85K in San Francisco, that's actually quite low because the cost of living in San Francisco is really high.
Is very,
So
very
this is a
high.
very simple comparison between Dutch and American taxes. Simple because taxes are complicated. So these are the Dutch tax rates. You have two of them. Anything above 73K, you're getting taxed 50%.
God
Those taxes
dang!
are more complicated because you have a federal tax rate.
Anything above 73K, you're getting taxed 50%.
And potentially a state tax rate. For example, in California, you do pay state income taxes, but in Texas, you don't. What you can see is generally you pay more taxes in the Netherlands. Let's take a look at 5 examples of 5 different salaries of what you would get in your take-home pay per month in the Netherlands and also in the US. And what you can see is generally what you get in your paycheck in the US is going to be more than the Netherlands. Where you see a difference is once you make a lot more money, especially in the US. For example, 100K, 200K, you get a lot more in your paycheck per month. Now, why? Well, it goes back to the fact that anything above 73,000 in the Netherlands is taxed at 50%.
So what's the finding? Well, it's more complicated than that, but if your goal is to make money and you're fortunate enough to be in a top profession, then the US is the place to be. In the Netherlands, you can't make as much money, but you also don't need to as well. You go to the Netherlands for balance. And a big part of balance is 1, vacation days, and 2, the ability to take your vacation days as well. In the
That's
US,
such facts.
a federal guarantee of minimum vacation days per employee. It depends on the company, and the average is still around 2 weeks. In the Netherlands, the amount is 20 days. In my company, I get 25 days, but I have friends who get 40 days off per year.
Ooh,
in
40
the US,
days?
I almost never took all my vacation days. Here in the Netherlands, I always take my vacation days. For example, in my first year working in the Netherlands, I had 25 days of vacation, but I didn't use up all 25 days. I didn't use up most of my vacation, if I'm honest. And my colleagues were like, "Are you serious? How come you're not using your vacation days?" And I was like, can I do that? Is that possible? Because the norm in the US is really to work.
Bro, it's crazy the mentality we have in the US. Like, that when people actually give us good working conditions, we question it because we're not used to it. We're used to slaving away.
People don't take all the vacation days. But the norm in Europe, in the Netherlands, is that everyone is taking the vacation days, especially in the summertime. And when that's the norm, then you also feel okay to take vacation as well. And the US is the country with the most unused vacation days at the end of the year. Which begs the question, why is that so? One reason may be tied to job security. People may not feel comfortable taking all the vacation in the US because there's too much work to do. One may fall behind, and if one falls behind, one may not get promoted, and one could get laid off as well, because US employment is at will, which means you can get fired at any time.
You're fired.
And especially right now,
You're fired.
the tech layoffs, people may not want to take vacation because, well, they want to prove themselves. But here, what I see in the Netherlands is that a lot of employees are still taking the vacation days, even if their companies aren't doing that well. And that's because employees in the Netherlands get a lot of rights. So now I work in HR, and I was talking to a friend who works in HR, and she was telling me how common it can be for managers in the US to try to fire someone in one of the European offices or the Dutch office because that person is underperforming.
And I want Charles gone. I need him gone.
Then this HR manager needs to let them know that it's not easy to just fire someone in the Netherlands. And with layoffs, a company can really only lay people off if they can prove that the company is doing bad financially. So one could say it's easier to hire and fire in the US, and it's harder to hire and fire in the Netherlands. But this job security in the Netherlands depends if it's a temporary contract or a permanent contract. And this was a shock for me coming from the US because most employees have permanent contracts to start with. But in the Netherlands, most employees have temporary contracts to begin with. And these temporary contracts can only be converted to permanent after 3 years or after 3 extensions, or if your employer decides to convert it before then. But once it does become a permanent contract, it's gold. In the US, most contracts are permanent.
So you just got to make it to that permanent contract, and you all gravy over in the Netherlands. Just got to get to the permanent contract.
But then you can get let go at any time. It's easier to hire, easier to fire. But once you do get a job contract in the US, it's also gold because usually with a job contract, that also means healthcare. Oh, healthcare in the US, such a big and complex topic. It gives me headaches. But
ridiculous.
it is really important because when you consider a job, you also take into consideration the healthcare plan of the employer because your healthcare is usually tied to your employer. And healthcare in the US is extremely expensive. In the Netherlands, healthcare is not free, but it is affordable. For example, you'll pay 100 to 200 euros a month when it comes to healthcare, dental, and vision. And the deductible, it's around 400 euros per year. And in the US, this amount can vary because it's so complex. There's so many different types of healthcare plans, but you'll generally pay on average around 8,000 US dollars per year for a single person. And the average deductible is around $2,000. So you will have to pay $2,000 out of pocket before the benefits come into play.
My annual health insurance in Holland is the same as my monthly health insurance in the States, my premium. I pay $2,500 per month for my health insurance.
And speaking of healthcare, let's talk a little bit about sick leave.
Yeah, that health insurance in the U.S. we all know is absolutely insane, and don't get caught without it. Then the bills are you're going bankrupt.
Short-term and long-term sick leave. In the US, if you get sick with a cold or flu, now this is going to depend on your job contract, your employer.
You're still going to work.
Generally, you do get some sick days. For example, one of my jobs in the US, I had 15 days of vacation, and I believe it was like 5-6 days of sick leave. And if I were sick more than 6 days, then I would need to use my vacation days. What I found in the Netherlands is that if you become sick with a cold or flu, something short term,
you don't go to work.
Generally just take the days off. Now, when it comes to long-term sick leave, in the US, there is no federal requirement for paid long-term sick leave. This also depends on your employer and also the state.
So if you're burnt out, sick, disabled long-term in the US, then an individual may take up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave over 12 months. Now, if you're burnt out, sick, disabled long-term in the Netherlands, then by law, the company is required to pay you at least 70% of your wages for a maximum period of 2 years. Now, many companies will often pay 100% in that first year, and some will pay 100% for 2 years.
And something else I found out about recently working in the Netherlands is if you're sick on vacation, you're eligible to swap those days out for sick days instead. For example, one of my friends went to Malaysia and she got sick, and when she came back, her employer found out and told her just to swap out those days and use sick days instead of vacation days. So that's a pretty good benefit as well.
Very cool.
Out. How normal it is for people to openly admit that they are burnt out or were burnt out. I mean, by now I've met at least 10 people who have told me that they're currently going through burnout or they went through burnout. And to say it openly like it's a normal sickness like a cold or flu, but in fact in the Netherlands, burnout is treated like a normal sickness. But when I was working in the US, I had never heard of the word burnout, nor did I know what it meant.
I heard it,
Netherlands,
but
I hear it all the time, left and right. And it's not because there's more burnout in the Netherlands. In fact, if you look at studies, there seems to be more burnout cases in the US compared to the Netherlands.
Of course.
Well, again, like we discussed, there is protection and employee rights when it comes to burnout in the Netherlands. So burnout is not a good thing at all, but in the Netherlands, it's not as stigmatized as much as it is in other countries. People feel like it's okay to admit that they're burnt out, to admit that they need help, because they do get protection, they do get benefits when it comes to burnout and sick leave, and that's the big difference. So which is a better country to work in? Well, that depends on who you are.
Depends on what you want.
Your dreams and goals in life. Generally, in the US, you can make a lot more money depending on the profession, but it tends to favor those in the top 1, 5, 10% of the population, and those that are more career-driven. Now, in the Netherlands, you do get more work-life balance. Pace of work life is generally slower, and you do get more personal time and employee rights as well. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What have your experiences been working in the US and or the Netherlands? Leave them in the comments below, and I hope you take care.
Dang, bro. I felt burnt out today. Like, I don't know. I was tired, bro. Like, mentally fatigued. But that didn't. I still have to get up and make videos, and I have fun doing videos most of the time. But some days I just can't. I'm burnt out. Like, well, I can't imagine like having a 9 to 5 and telling them I'm burnt out. I'm like, okay, either you can be let go or you can quit, but you don't got no protections. I don't think so. Or I guess they say you can go on unpaid leave, but bills don't allow that. So people aren't gonna do that because you got too many bills. And that's the reason. Even though I'm burnt out on my burnout days with YouTube, I'm still in front of the camera making videos. The bills don't stop. But that's all we have for this one. If you guys enjoyed, please don't forget to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and check out the next one. I'll see y'all next time.